I was really glad to have this conversation with a young lady who has grown up in the Quiverful movement, and I was really glad to talk to her to hear her thoughts about how the toxic theology affected her in her life. If you've spent any amount of time on this channel, you probably know that I am very passionate to call things out, to expose bad theology, and to put content out there that can lead people towards freedom. Hi, I'm Katie. On this channel, I do conversations and vlogs. Conversations with all kinds of people, from rock stars and actors to not famous people, but people who've gone through really challenging things and really want to tell their story, and I'm passionate to help them tell their story. So I hope you will stick around and subscribe to this if that sounds good to you.
I still understood abuse. I still understood having like your identity stripped down and being told that you can't trust what's happening around you and being gaslit.
Hello and welcome to the Epic Kate Show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to hear your story because it's something I've been interested in for a long time, and I know a lot of other people have heard of 19 kids and counting on and Duggar scandals, and so that's like the only view people have of this quiverful thing. And
Yes.
so the thing that I think a lot of people would want to know is are the Duggars accurate representations of this lifestyle?
Um, I mean, I guess yes and no. I mean, first of all, like I don't really know the Duggars. I've,
Yeah.
met them at public events. But like I'm not friends with them or anything like that. So, but my personal knowledge does come from the fact that like we were raised, like you said, in kind of similar movements, like the Quiverful movement, going to conferences put on by Bill Gothard and the Institute of Basic Life Principles, that sort of thing. So, I mean, yes and no, in that like all the rules and all the um, I guess their lifestyle that's depicted on TV is pretty accurate, except it also goes a lot deeper than that. Um, you know, first of all, there's only so much that, a TV show can record. And second of all, like, if you have not experienced it yourself, then, you might not know what you're looking at, and where some of these like rules come from, like these deep-seated like core beliefs, and what the penalties could be if you don't follow those rules, or at least believe the way they do.
So what are some of those core things that people on the outside just would have no clue about?
Like a lot of people who've watched that TV show or just been around other people who, have large families and are, very religious. I don't think they understand how much of that comes from like fundamentalism. How much it's not just like, oh, it's just a family that has a lot of kids. It's like, no, like there's a lot that goes into having that many kids. First of all, that like it's your religious duty to have as many kids as you can. And that um, it's not just like a few extra kids in the household. There's women are expected to joyfully and excitedly have as many children as they can. Honestly, whether or not the parents can afford that many children, you're just expected to trust the Lord to, take care of all of your kids' needs. And then, behind the scenes, what goes on is the kids end up parenting themselves a lot of the time. And so I'm the oldest of six children. So being the oldest daughter, I think across many cultures comes with a lot of expectations and baggage, but it's just really intensified in kind of this subculture of, you're expected to be the second mother and parent and, take care of the household and all of that. And, and I will say like my personal experience was not nearly as extreme or negative as a lot of the other girls I grew up with. They either had a lot more younger siblings, or their parents didn't value education as much as my parents did. So, I mean, at least I had the chance to like take my school seriously, whereas they, some of the girls I was around never did. Like they truly were just like to help take care of the kids and cook dinners when their mom was too overwhelmed to take care of 10, 11 kids. So there's like all of that goes into it. And of course, like me being the oldest child of a relatively large family, like that has impacted me the most personally. And I do see a lot of the fundamentalism and the effects of that fundamentalism through that lens. It's not just like a larger family than average. There's so much that goes on beneath the surface that has lasting effects on all the kids.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a woman who was kind of raised adjacent to this and was in a horribly abusive, spiritually and physically abusive marriage until God gave her the strength to get out. And she talked a bit about Gotland and just all that umbrella of thing. And if you're not under a man's authority, you're in danger of hell and all this stuff.
Yeah, no, that's definitely drilled into you from the beginning. I mean, I was very, very fortunate in that like my father was a very gentle and is a very gentle man. And he did not expect the amount of control over the household or the, level of respect that really Bill Gothard expects from the families. But it shouldn't be like I was lucky, and that shouldn't be the way it is. Like my fate and my understanding of the world and my childhood should not be dependent on whether or not like my father was a good man, because everybody else might not be as lucky as I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely escaped the worst of it, but even like the least of it still leaves a lot of scars and a lot of just like dysfunctional thinking that you have to work through, like one of the most lasting issues I guess I've had is as you referenced, like the umbrella and like the idea of authority and not trusting yourself, is like I truly believe to my core that I could not trust myself. And so it kind of stripped me of your natural defenses against like dangerous people. When you have those when you interact with someone and you have those red flags pop up in your mind and you're like, I don't like this person, or I don't trust this person, or I shouldn't share this information with this person. Like, I mean, I had all of those natural defenses that every human does, and yet like they were basically stripped from me and basically taught me to never trust those. And that like I was coming up with those because I was a selfish person, or I was a sinful person, or I was just looking to find things wrong in the world. And it did expose me to like dangerous people. Like I definitely ended up being friends with people who hurt me deeply. And I've definitely stayed in dangerous situations much longer than I should have, if I had just been willing to trust my instincts.
At what point did some of those theological things and those denying your personal feelings and autonomy things, when did that start to like catch up with you and realize like, wait, this is wrong?
Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as like ideas and beliefs themselves, I was always hesitant to like buy wholesale into them. Like even when I was like 13, 14, I would sometimes argue with my parents over like the family devotions, because I was like, that's not right. Like Dinah shouldn't have been punished for that, like, and they would just tell me to be quiet and listen to the lesson. And my siblings got mad at me because I was dragging family devotions on forever. Um, so in that sense, like thankfully, I still had like kind of like that natural skepticism. As far as like people go, I mean, and it took years, and it still is taking years. It still is like an effort for me to rebuild my natural like protection against danger in the world. My family ended up leaving the church we went to when I was about 18. I was a senior in high school, for a variety of reasons. One being that my mom felt very unsupported in some of the choices she made for parenting, one of them being that she wanted all of her kids to go to college, even the girls, and that was kind of frowned upon in our church. And then my father had gone through some really stressful stuff at work and started drinking alcohol heavily. And when he reached out to kind of the men's group and asked for help, they just told him to like man up and stop causing problems. And if he was a Christian, he should just get over this, kind of with the white knuckle it. And so my parents felt extremely unsupported, left when I was 18. At that same time, I was kind of, I was planning for college. So I was more open-minded about other mindsets, because I was visiting campuses and I was listening to, like student ambassadors. And so that certainly helped make me more receptive. But then even through like college, I mean, I had a couple of really negative experiences with friends and roommates. And even through the good times of those relationships, I remember thinking like, oh, this doesn't feel right. Like, I don't like how they make me feel. I don't like how I feel forced into doing these activities with them, or I feel like I can't express my own opinions, or, and anytime I had kind of those like red flags pop up in my mind, I just bat them back down. And I was like, no, stop thinking that. Like, you're being selfish. You need to give them time to talk. Or no, like, she's been through like a really tough day. So just give her space and like, don't, don't pressure her to do whatever. And like, and I just really told myself, like, you can't trust yourself. Like, you are like looking at this situation and this other person's actions with like all of this preconception and like baggage in the back of your mind. You can't trust your own like intuition. You can't trust yourself. And then some of these relationships ended pretty explosively. And, and I'm grateful that they ended. Because like I just felt miserable and, really unhappy and beaten down in one friendship in particular. And through kind of like the ending of that. And then at the end, I was like, oh, I'm not the only one that brings baggage to relationships or preconceptions. Like, maybe this is not all on me. Maybe some of this is on her too. And then that, I think, is when I realized like, oh, wait, like I've been approaching social interactions, not in a very healthy way, certainly not in like a safe way. And I really tied a lot of that back to the verse in Jeremiah where it says the heart is deceitfully wicked. No one can trust it. Who can know it? And honestly, like today, I can't really tell you what the context is. But it was just drilled into us as children. And I think like the purpose was from Bill Gothard to make you not trust yourself, make you like dependent upon his authority. And then I, took that and carried it into like the beginning of my adult life. And I mean, even today, like it's, I'm 30 now. And so it's been a few years since college. And I'm in a much better place where I'm learning to trust my intuition, but it still is very much like my gut reaction is still to not trust myself. And so I still have to stop and say, no, like I can listen to my red flags. It's okay to listen to my red flags. So that was a very long-winded answer.
Yeah, that must be something that you work even harder to fight for. So it's probably more finely tuned and getting more finely tuned than the average person's when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah. And I mean, and you look at society at large and like women are taught to ignore their their warning systems, or even if they have their warning systems intact, we're taught to smile and be polite, even to men who we are uncomfortable around because their comfort matters more than like our perceived safety. And that's just like society wide. And so like then you add like all of Bill Gothard and IBLP fundamentalism on top of it. So like I did not start from a good place.
Wow, you must be really passionate to see other people walk in freedom and walk in trusting themselves to be safe.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I worked for about 2.5 years at a women's shelter. Um, and that was a really powerful experience. And it was helpful for me in that I don't really have personal experience with like intimate partner violence or like necessarily like family abuse. So I did have like some personal distance from a lot of the issues that the women coming in were experiencing, but I still understood abuse. I still understood having like your identity stripped down and being told that you can't trust what's happening around you and being gaslit. So it was a good combination for me to help those women, and that I wasn't in the middle of what they were experiencing, but it was similar enough that I could empathize and understand where they were.
That is just such a hard thing to come to grips with, of the fact of being abused, because it's like, no, abuse is so much worse. But it's like, it's not a competition. People don't have to feel like, well, this didn't happen to me, so what happened to me was okay. Like, no, it's not. If you were told that you're nothing without a man, that's abuse.
Mm.
It was college, and it was, what was, do you remember any specific like messages or specific things that really triggered that, like, I'm not going back? This breed of Christianity is not for me.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there was any big defining moment. I think there's just a lot of little moments.
Planting seeds all over the place.
Yeah. So at the same time that I, turned 18, I was looking at college, and I felt very passionately that I wanted to go to college, and I was smart enough to go to college, and like God gave me the brains to go to college. Like I felt very passionately about that, as like the other people in the church were being like, oh, well, girls don't need to go to college because they'll become feminists and then they'll get pregnant and they'll get abortions and lesbian and all sorts of stuff.
Lesbians getting each other pregnant. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that I could go to college without turning lesbian or getting an abortion, like if I really didn't want either of those things. So, that was like kind of one chip in it. Another was I ended up attending a Christian liberal arts school that I really enjoyed. And I think a lot of the other like freshmen came in and were like, oh, this place is kind of conservative. And I was like, this is the most liberal place I've ever been in my life. Like, I feel so free. I am so happy. Like, I can actually have a boy in my dorm room until 10 o'clock at night if I want to. And of course, they were like, 10 o'clock at night. And I was like, at all. I could have a boy in my room at all.
Without a chaperone?
Yeah, RAs would kind of walk the halls, but they didn't necessarily stick their head like in our rooms. So, that. And then also in the science department, a lot of the professors at John Brown University, I guess to use the Christian phrase, believe in evolution. And that was a huge turnoff to basically everybody in my church. And they were shocked that like some of my, friends my age and their parents were shocked that I was even considering going to John Brown, because they teach evolution. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be a science major, so I don't care. Like, I'm not going to take any science classes. I'll be fine. Don't worry about my soul. And then that stuck out to me, that they were just so adamantly against something like that when it really wasn't even going to affect my life. And then I told one of the women in the church about a family law class that I was interested in eventually attending. And they had different guest speakers coming each week. The professor brought in speakers. And one of the speakers, I was told, was a doctor who performed abortions. And I mean, JVU is still a pretty evangelical institution. They're all pretty pro-life. But, the professor thought it was really important for these students who would be, lawyers or social workers or working in family law to understand like viewpoint under, expectations, like how do you work with someone like this or have a conversation with someone like this, even when you don't agree with them. And I thought it was a very mature way to go about it. However, like the people I mentioned that to in church were absolutely horrified. And I was like, well, just because you're listening to this doctor doesn't mean that you agree with him. Like, if you're going to be working in this field, like it's important to understand what they're saying, like especially if you don't agree with it. And they were just too horrified to even consider it. And I was like, that doesn't that was one of the things that really stuck out to me when I was 18, 19, was like, why are we being so close-minded? Like, don't we think our beliefs could withstand a little bit of scrutiny? And like, shouldn't we, treat people with respect, because they're still human beings and created in the image of God, whether we agree with what they're doing or not. So those were definitely two things. And then I remember when I was a freshman, I was in like my semester-long orientation class, which also talked about the Chronicles of Narnia. That was fun. It was our first test, and our professor, who I really liked him, he prayed before our tests for us. And when I was still at the kind of the Bill Gothard Fundamentalist Church, our youth pastor, I guess that's what he was, he mentioned how when he was in seminary before a test, his professor would pray that all the students would do exactly as well as they deserved. And it was kind of like this, like, and you better have studied sort of thing. So I had that in my mind. I went to my first test in orientation as a freshman, and my professor prayed that we would all do better than we deserved and better than we had studied. And it just really struck me. Like, I just thought about it like for the rest of the week. And I was like, this is like a entirely different theology.
Because this theology actually has something to do with grace.
Yes. So I guess those are kind of three big things when I was about 18 and 19 that really, really hit me. Those were kind of like the very beginning of like really kind of deconstructing and looking at my Christianity.
If somebody managed to watch this video that was in this world, what would you want to say to them?
I guess if I could look back and say to maybe me when I was 16 or 17, or anyone else who was stuck in that life at that age, I guess I would say, this is the life you have now because like this is what your parents have chosen to raise you with, but you are your own person. You can have your own relationship with God and your own beliefs, and you can make your own life decisions on what you believe is best and what you believe God thinks is best. And so embrace that. And if God is real and God is as powerful as you've been told all your life, then he can handle doubt. He can handle scrutiny. He is too big to be just the God of the Bible, the NIV Bible. He is the God of science, and he is the God of art, and he is the God of technology, and he is big. He is so big. Don't limit yourself to only understanding one piece of him and one piece of yourself. Yes. Like, be willing to ask questions and search for answers.
Ask questions. There's nowhere in the Bible that says a woman's salvation is dependent on a man. Look it up. Read the Bible cover to cover. It's not in there.
Exactly.
I've read the Bible cover to cover a few times. It's not in there, but don't take my word for it. There are lies inside of fundamentalism that are heavy, that are painful, that are completely antithetical to God. We're both very passionate about this.
Yes.
But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share about these things. And I hope that this video will reach somebody. And I'm sure there are, on the other side in the world of people who have no clue about it other than the Duggars. It's just fascinating. It's just, what is it like for people here? And I hope that this video will inspire and encourage them to research more, because the more we know, the more truth is out there, the more we can help other people who are trapped.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, it's hard to understand if you haven't either experienced yourself or spent a lot of time listening to people who lived it.
Yeah.
So I think the people who took the time and listened to me stumbling through all of my concerns and spitting out ideas that I don't believe today, who were just patient with me and let me ask my questions and come to my own answers, did me a world of good. And I am so grateful to them. Like, they were incredible people. So if other people can do that for, the fundamentalist people they know in their lives, like, it can be life-changing.
So I want to say thank you. And the way that I say goodbye on my channel is I give hugs. Hugs.
Thank you for having me. This has been a blast. I'm really glad and to be a part of this and watch your show. And I hope that, other people get to hear the story and continue to learn more on their own.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
If you're interested in this kind of thing, I highly recommend the channel Fundy Fridays. Jen does an amazing job of really talking about things in an open, educational way about the dangers of fundamentalism, and I've learned a lot from her. I'd like to ask a kind of personal question, if I might. Have your beliefs evolved and changed in your life? And have you realized that something that you were taught was wrong and it took a while to kind of find yourself again and through that process and figure out what actually was real and right? I'd love to hear about that process that has gone on in your heart. If you would like to share with me here in the comment section or on Instagram, slide into my DMs on Instagram or whatnot. All right, now I must give you the hugs. Hugs!